what the big deal about Cracker Jack is. Did you ever go and buy a pack of Cracker Jack thinking you're going to get a prize and find no prize in the box?
You got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me.
Freehand is beating his net at the plate. Crawford is over there watching. Good see, sir. You're in the wrong seat, buddy. Come on. Oh, I must be in the front row.
Typically, when we record on Wednesdays, we record in the morning. I'm glad we didn't, because probably an hour after we would have typically finished, it was announced that McGonigle and the Tigers reached an agreement for an extension of 8 years and $150 million. I think that's $18.75 million per year average. This is, of course, was reported by our friend Bob Nightingale. And so I don't think he had the breakdown of how it would play out through the entire the length of the contract. It's not the same amount every year. I think there was I think it was revealed later, there was a $14 million signing bonus.
Yes, with $8 million payable within the first 30 days.
Okay, I've never heard of that. Boy, that's sticking their feet to the fire right there. You got 30 days. Fucking pay me.
Where's my money or I don't play?
This is fascinating, and I was listening to Detroit Sports Talk Radio this morning when it happened, and mostly greeted with universal praise. There was a little bit of consternation from some, and I'm glad I heard that from some, because I've always had that attitude towards these kind of contracts. You can't just say this is awesome, we're going to get them for so cheap down the road, but there is an element of risk, and we talked about that quite a bit last week after the Cubs had made similar moves with Nico Horner and PCA. But I think you and I talked briefly about this. I think you're right. This is far more comparable to the Yoan Moncada deal that the White Sox signed him to, that Rick Hahn put together. And it was kind of a bit of a novel idea back then, and I questioned it and eventually coined the term Wrath of Hahn, because it rhymes with Khan. Now we're trying to call this Wrath of Harris, but that doesn't really rhyme with anything, or eventually we'll talk about
makes sense, really.
Yeah, we don't know yet. I think it's interesting to compare, the top prospect, and one of the top, I'd say easily top 2 prospects in baseball at the time was Yoan Moncada.
He was number 1.
Was he number 1?
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't even a prospect at that point because he already had a breakout season. But McGonigle is the number 2 prospect in baseball, but the number 1 prospect in all of baseball. I keep forgetting his name, from the Pirates.
Cooper Pratt? Oh, no, Connor Griffin.
Connor Griffin, yes.
Yeah.
He signed a similar deal this week. So we're seeing all sorts of these deals being made across the league, and specifically with my 2 teams in the past 2 weeks. So it's very interesting to me. Rick Hahn was doing this at a time when it was fairly unprecedented. The Braves, I remember at the time, had signed Acuna Jr. to a long-term deal. I think that was like an 8-year, $100 million deal, which seemed crazy at the time. But as inflation and everything else makes that look pretty small at this point. But it did seem a little less common when Rick Hahn was doing it. So maybe he was a trailblazer, and now everyone is kind of catching up.
I mean, it would make sense since, again, the Sox won so many world championships with this formula.
It kind of has worked. I mean, it's worked for the Braves because they've won a World Series, but certainly did not work for Rick Hahn. He did a similar deal with Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert Jr. So Rick Hahn was gambling heavily on this strategy, and it blew up in his face, and he's no longer employed by anyone that I'm aware of. So yeah, it's interesting that this trend, maybe started by Rick Hahn, is now continuing. I think there's a reason why. There's many reasons why this is happening now. But do you think that the CBA, looming labor strife, the new CBA, has anything to do with this? Like, I feel the owners are happy to be signing these deals right now because something's going on. They know what's going to be happening with the next CBA.
Yeah, but the way they're signing them, it almost seems like they know that there is going to be a baseball strike because the immediate following season in all these deals is like $1 million. Like McGonigle next year gets $1 million.
It's kind of an insurance policy.
PCA gets like a low
so
year seller.
So 27 is all small in these deals. I didn't notice that. That's good for you to pick up. I didn't realize that. That makes sense. That's like an insurance policy that the player is happy to give up, for next year. What do they give a fuck? They're still getting guaranteed after that. So, I've got a theory that I'm just I don't know how giant labor negotiations work, but just trying to think logically how it could be working and what could be happening here. We've heard this is all about a salary cap. The owners are demanding a salary cap. The players will never agree to a salary cap. So we'll probably get a version. I don't think we're going to have a salary cap. I think we're going to have some kind of revenue control or spending control or revenue sharing. It's going to be a new landscape of sorts. But if the owners want to get something in any negotiation, you have to give up something. And I think what most likely the owners have already colluded, which is, it's an ugly word, but I think they've already decided the thing that they're going to give to the players that the players would really want is less control. Right now, teams have control over their players once they make the majors for 6 years. And we're seeing these deals are all, 7, 8 years long, or pushes well past their arbitration years in whatever case. So I think what the owners are thinking they're going to be offering to the players is they could become free agents after maybe 5 or even 4 years instead of 6 years. And that would be very appealing to the players to take, to give back whatever else, if it's not a full salary cap, whatever else would work better for the owners or whatever they're asking for. So I think that might explain why all these deals are happening to the top prospects right now. Of course, the top prospects are happy to be instant multimillionaires, have their futures secured forever. And I just think that might explain why this is all happening now, and it hadn't happened much before or since Rick Hahn, but we're seeing it now. Do you think there's any validity to my theory?
Yeah, I think there is. I think, they'll be arrogant too and saying, look what we're doing. We're on board with what you guys want to do.
Yeah.
Look at what we've done already before we even hit these negotiations.
Well, I think we talked about it briefly last week. Like average MLB salaries have reached an all-time high. Like the average salary for an MLB player is $5 million something. Never been that high. So the owners can point to that they've thrown all these big deals out there. They've they've increased salaries over time. So yeah, I think we're going to hear all these points, of course, all through the off season. But I don't know. I wanted to put it out there that it could be one explanation of what's going on. Specifically with the Tigers, though, the Chris Ilitch, the owner of the Tigers, who inherited the team from his father, Mike, who was famous for spending above the Tigers' weight.
Oh, yeah. He liked to spend.
And that was awesome for 10 plus years when Tigers were a top 5 payroll and making the playoffs every year, going to the World Series, never fucking winning it. But that party bill came due in the late teens and early 20s, where the Tigers were just non-competitive. Unfortunately, after the death of Mike Ilitch and the takeover of the Tigers by Chris Ilitch. Since then, Chris has been fighting the legacy of his father as a free spending billionaire, with the Little Caesars empire backing him. Chris has been fighting the cheap narrative in that he never spends on the Tigers. People in Detroit at least even complain that he doesn't spend enough on the Red Wings, which is the other team they own. But the NHL has a salary cap, and you're just always at the salary cap. So saying it's cheap because the Red Wings aren't great is ridiculous, but such as sports commentary and fandom. But so I think that's part of it. The Tigers have spent a shit ton of money. They're actually bumping up against the first level of the luxury tax this year. They're over $230 million. I think they might be 240. Not exactly sure how today's news affects that number, but they're a top 10 payroll right now. So I think some of this might be, Chris just kind of fighting that legacy and fighting that that narrative that he's cheap. It's just not true anymore, but that could be part of it. Another factor is the Tarik Skubal situation, and which they are currently on the opposite side of this situation. They would love to have signed. I mean, how good would it look right now if the Tigers had signed Skubal to a 6-8 year deal 8 years ago, and he'd be making $18 million this year or whatever, instead of the arbitration fight that they had where he's making 32 and sure to leave the team in his first year of free agency. So I think they're seeing the opposite side of this, how it could go bad if you don't lock up your young stars early. So those are all at least mitigating factors to why this is happening for the Tigers specifically, but globally, I think the CBA definitely has a large part to do with this. It also didn't hurt that McGonigle had his first home run the other day, but this is all happening after 61 major league at bats. It's just kind of amazing that I am nervous, as I always am with these kind of deals, and he's so young, but Christ, he's already their best hitter. I mean, he's the most dangerous hitter on the team, statistically, and like just when you see him come to the plate, he's got the most professional at bats. He's got a 2-strike approach. He's a contact hitter, which is sorely lacking across most of Major League Baseball. So it'll be fascinating. We'll see if it turns into another Wrath of Han situation, but for right now, Tigers fans are happy. So.
Post-game show is brought to you by Christ, I can't find it. The hell with it.
One guy poured beer all over my head. The guy said, "How can you take that?" I said, "Look, that man didn't do nothing. He poured some beer on my head. He's just showing he's a White Sox fan. There ain't nothing wrong with that."
Sparky, a million thanks for, as always, the most interesting interview. And now today, let's just have a lot of thrilling baseball and not so many fisticuffs.
Word Hole Media.